What's the one Reddit post that you will never forget? The one where the girl accidentally set her language to Spanish so everyone just replied in Spanish to frick with her. And I quote, "Koalas are freaking horrible animals. They have one of the smallest brain-to-body ratios of any mammal. Additionally, their brains are smooth. A brain is folded to increase the surface area for neurons. If you present a koala with leaves plucked from a branch, laid on a flat surface, the koala will not recognize it as food. They are too thick to adapt their feeding behavior to cope with change. In a room full of potential food, they can literally starve to death. This is not the token of an animal that is winning at life." Speaking of stupidity and food, one of the likely reasons for their primitive brains is the fact that additionally to being poisonous, eucalyptus leaves, the only thing they eat, have almost no nutritional value. They can't afford the extra energy to think. They sleep more than 80% of their fricking lives. When they are awake, all they do is eat, shit and occasionally scream like fricking Satan. Because eucalyptus leaves hold such little nutritional value, koalas have to ferment the leaves in their guts for days on end. Unlike their brains, they have the largest hind gut-to-body ratio of any mammal. Many herbivorous mammals have adaptations to cope with harsh plant life taking its toll on their teeth. Rodents, for instance, have teeth that never stop growing. Some animals only have teeth on their lower jaw, grinding plant matter on bony plates in the tops of their mouths. Others have enlarged molars that distribute the wear and break down plant matter more efficiently. Koalas are no exception. When their teeth erode down to nothing, they resolve the situation by starving to death. Because they're freaking terrible animals. Being mammals, koalas raise their joeys on milk, admittedly, one of the lowest milk yields to body ratio. There's a trend here. When the young joey needs to transition from rich, nourishing substances like milk, to eucalyptus, a plant that seems to be making it abundantly clear that it doesn't want to be eaten, it finds it does not have the necessary gut flora to digest the leaves. To remedy this, the young joey begins nuzzling its mother's anus until she leaks a little diarrhea, actually fecal pap, slightly less digested, which he then proceeds to slurp on. This partially digested plant matter gives him just what he needs to start developing his digestive system. Of course, he may not even have needed to bother nuzzling his mother. She may have been suffering from incontinence. Why? Because koalas are riddled with chlamydia. In some areas the infection rate is 80% or higher. This statistic isn't helped by the fact that one of the few other activities koalas will spend their precious energy on is rape. Despite being seasonal breeders, males seem to either not know or care, and will simply overpower a female regardless of whether she is ovulating. If she fights back, he may drag them both out of the tree, which brings us full circle back to the brain. Koalas have a higher than average quantity of cerebrospinal fluid in their brains. This is to protect their brains from injury should they fall from a tree. An animal so thick it has its own little built-in special ed helmet. I freaking hate them. TLDR, koalas are stupid, leaky, STI-riddled sex offenders. But, hey, they look cute. If you ignore the terrifying snake eyes and terrifying feet. Edit, well, it looks like this went from Comedy Minute to Comedy Night judging by how it blew up. Also, thank you for the gold, kind stranger. Best cake day gift someone could anonymously receive. The one where someone was having a mental health episode, and posted that doctors planted a tracker in his arm. As a result, he hadn't left the house and had run out of food days before. The whole damn thread gently coaxed him into going to the ER. My favorite one is probably the guy who posted in Tifu about his adopted son, who he had raised with heavy influence from his native Chinese culture, visits to China and regular Chinese lessons and everything. Turns out the kid was actually Korean. Edit, it's since been deleted. Here's the story, updated link though here's the original post. The story has been deleted but the comments are still there. The post where some guy revealed that he'd been sitting on the rim to shit his entire life because he thought toilet seats were meant for women. A story someone posted about a nasty waitress they had. Not just bad service, but actually rude as well. The table was angry and decided not to leave a tip, but the poster said no, we should leave a tip. We're not having a bad night, we don't have a problem, so why wouldn't we tip? They tipped especially well, and left a note saying they hoped her night got better. They saw her go by the table before they'd walked out. She opened the booklet, then sat down in the booth and started crying. That one were that lad was in love with his friend for years, and they done that if we're both not married by this age we'll marry each other thing, and the lass ended up getting killed in a car crash just after they got together. It messed him up so bad. Don't think I'll ever forget that post. Just woke up and did not expect this. Reading through all your comments now about your stories and I'm overwhelmed. This is a devastating story, but there's so much you can take from this. First of all, don't freaking drink and drive. Cannot stress that enough. Thank you. I know it's cliche, but you're not on this planet for long enough. Tell your family, lovers and friends that you love them all the time. Never stop that. I lost my uncle, and I tell you what, there's no worse feeling than being awake at 4 a.m. wishing you had that time when you /Kakalak saved a fellow Redditor from CO poisoning. The guy who thought it was funny that he peed on his girlfriend's pregnancy test and that he turned out to be pregnant. As per an astute Redditor, it actually turned out that he had testicular cancer. In a follow-up post, he got checked out, had a small tumor, and as it was very early stages had it treated immediately. From an FU comic to cancer-saving treatment. Now that's a post I won't forget. There was a guy who worked at a shipping dock in China, and he was a supervisor. Every time a crate was unloaded off the boat, it had be evaluated by someone and then radioed back to him. The guy who was doing the checking didn't radio back, so Op sent another guy to check what the holdup is. Guy goes over, then his radio goes dark. So the Op does an emergency shutdown of the factory, goes over himself and looks over from afar and sees the two guys dead on the ground. Apparently heavier than air inert gases were leaking from one of the crates and immediately suffocated the two guys. It's one of those instances where reality can be just as terrifying as a horror movie. The tifu about the guy that gets high on mushrooms while his wife is asleep and ends up almost crying because he loses track of how many cats he has. I laugh every time I read it. The woman who posted about loving her husband so much, she stayed with him even after realizing she wasn't bisexual, but a lesbian. Her husband helped her realize it, pointing out that she only looked at / commented about women when they were out together. But he was her best friend and they had made a family together, and she chose to stay where she was happy. From what I remember, they still had a sex life and he did his best to make her happy in the bedroom. I just thought the idea of such a love as that was really beautiful. A love so profound that it defies all barriers, including sexual orientation. The guy who wanted to walk in on his female roommate masturbating. He apparently finally did it and said, "It went okay." There was this one guy who posted a comment on an AskReddit thread that told a story about how he ate Taco Bell and got the shits, and he was in a parking garage and he shat and his shit ran down the stairs and onto multiple innocent civilians, and it was on the news that night. Edit. What the frick? Thanks Edit 2. This is the original comment. The sex spreadsheet 1. A woman wrote a post about how her husband made a spreadsheet documenting all the times she refused to have sex with him. The story made the national news. That's how I found Reddit. A guy trying to find a particularly obscure song and an anonymous person finds it. The response to Op thanking them was great. SSHP is okay. The dude that tried throwing a steak that his wife's boss cooked out a window. Window was closed. What to do when you win the lottery. My favorite Reddit story of all time. The poster's friend was apparently pretty vanilla, but his girlfriend liked some dirty talk. The best he could come up with was, "Yeah, you like that, you freaking retard?" Someone made an AskReddit, and they had clearly been pushed to the limit with a grasshopper that had gotten behind some cabinets and wouldn't shut up. At my house, we were having the exact same situation, so I laughed and thought I'd look at the comments to see a solution that I could also use. Someone had responded with something along the lines of, "It's really easy, you just need to get a bowl on the ground, 1/3 water and 1/3 maple syrup or something sticky, and just leaves it." The follow-up comment was, "What is other third?" My wife and I got a case of the giggles at that, and I legitimately laughed on and off for 30 minutes and couldn't contain myself. To this day, whenever my wife is helping me with ingredients, I shoot off, "What's the other third?" And it begins again. Edit, I meant cricket, not grasshopper. Thanks for pointing that out. Additionally, people asked if it worked. You can try for yourself if you get a shallow cup or a bowl. Put 1/3 water and the other third liquid detergent, and see if you catch M. The one about the kid who went to dinner with his girlfriend's parents, tried to be funny and pretended he hadn't ever heard of a potato. Her father then got really pissed off, and I believe he kicked him out of the house. There was a response to a post, I think it was an Mallard meme, about getting out of someone's way when they're speeding. "You're not the police and you should just worry about yourself and let them get their ticket." Someone gave a story about a buddy of theirs that died because of that. They were on a crew chopping down trees when the buddy got horribly injured by the chainsaw. They were too far away from civilization to wait for the ambulance, so they stayed on the phone with the emergency line and sped out onto the highway to meet EMS halfway. Except some bitch wouldn't just let them pass, so for 10 to 15 miles, they were stuck behind her, honking and yelling while she just stayed right in front of them and slowed them down by at least 10 minutes. They ultimately passed her and threw a bloody shirt at her car, so she followed them until they met up with police and EMS. Thinking she was going to be the savior of the day, she tries to tell the cops what they did, but ends up getting cited, or arrested, for trying to police their speed. In the meantime, the buddy gets loaded into the ambulance and taken to the hospital, but ends up dying 5 to 10 minutes out from the hospital. The guy telling the story wasn't 100% sure that his friend would have survived had he made it, but he would have had a better chance, and they lost that chance because some bitch tried to make them slow down instead of just minding her business, getting out of the way for 30 seconds, and going on with her day. Ever since I read that, I always get out of the way of a speeding car as soon as I safely can. If there's an emergency, I won't be the one to hold them up. If there's not, then they're welcome to go get their ticket even faster. Today you, tomorrow me. The sailor who told the story about how the operations officer changed the course of a naval vessel so he could eat his bagel in peace. Link here. Also the guy who plays Goofy at Disney World making some girls smile. Link here.